Thanks for joining us for this episode, and I do want to remind you to make sure that you are following us on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you may listen to podcasts. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/@churchadvance, and you can actually watch video versions of each episode. We'd also really appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star review and share this content with other pastors and church leaders. We want to help as many of these folks as we can, and so we'd really appreciate you sharing this episode with your friends. Well, thanks again for joining us as we begin today's episode and continue to advance a reformation of fellowship, partnership, and gospel hope amongst Bible-believing pastors and churches. This is Church Advance with Bryan Sams.
And hello, friends. Welcome back to the Church Advance podcast. And this is your host, Bryan Sams. Good to have you. And Luke, welcome back to the show, man. It's good to see you again today.
Yes, sir. It's always good to be on the mic with you. And I look forward to jumping into some all fresh, new, fresh content today, right?
Oh, my goodness. So we're going to talk about raising kids a little bit today. And, I heard before you always have a lot more to say about raising kids until you raise kids, and then you feel like you have a lot less to say. So I think that's probably true. But here I am now. I have 5 children, and many of you would know that. 5. There's 5 kids. In fact, this morning we were getting ready for school and work, and all my younger ones were out in the kitchen. They were grabbing their backpacks and about to head outdoors. So 11, 6, 5, and 3. And I'm just looking at them. They're just running around and being kids. And I'm like, what am I doing, man? This is nuts. Like, look at this. And then on top of it, I got a 16-year-old daughter. So, we've got it all. We've had unique story. We've adopted 4 out of the 5 of our children. 3 of them came to us within 9 months. In 2019 and 2020. And so we've just kind of been all over the map, and we got quite a spread. And now we've got a 16-year-old who's actually going to be heading off to college early and doing a dual enrollment year. We got everything from a relatively college age student to one who's just not yet in kindergarten. So yeah, man, we're doing it. And I know that I know less about parenting now than I did probably before I had kids. But I do think that there's something unique about raising a lot of kids. And really, I never really thought about 5 kids as a lot until people start asking you how many kids you have. And the reaction's the same everywhere I go. Wow. Oh, man, I must be busy, or you guys are crazy. And I'm like, wow, I guess I didn't really think about it. I do know when I see somebody with 6 or 7, 8 kids, but I guess I thought 5 was still, we're outnumbered, man. Once you call 3, you're outnumbered. So, wow. Yeah, man, Luke, you're raising a little gal.
I was going to say, you've got 5. I've got 1. She's almost 7 years old. Some days it is like the most wonderful gift. Other days it's just, I want to pull my hair out. And so you've got that times 5. So yeah. And so before we dive into the main content, I just had a couple questions pop into my head. I want to ask you. One is kind of just for fun, and one is a little bit more serious. So the kind of more just for fun question, because I know how I've asked myself, or I guess noticed this many times, but in my own parenting. But what is one thing that before you had kids, you said you would never do as a parent that you have found yourself doing?
Yeah, I think just from my background, I had this view of children, very conservative Christian thing, like, militant, kind of lined up, they're all going to dress the same way. They're going to look the same way. We're all going to sing together at church.
Yeah.
That's
Amen.
it. That's never happened. And I think it's because one of the things I've learned is the cookie cutter regimented, everybody look the same, be the same, quickly went away when you have 5 kids and you just realize that's not our life. That's not who we are. We're not gonna spend 10 hours a day practicing our violin and singing when we don't know what grade we're in our homeschool kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's something like that stereotypical where every kid's gonna play an instrument, we're gonna sing together, that sort of stuff, just that kind of faded away. That's kind of silly. Um, we we don't. Now that's probably good. That's probably the thing that comes to mind. Just
Yeah.
I don't know why that stuck out to me, but that's just kind of a funny picture I get every time I see a large family of singing together. So that's great. I mean, it's really cute, but I always think to myself, well, I hope those kids are, able to enjoy being a kid, and that there's not too much pressure on them to be this um, cookie cutter looking
Mhm.
child that doesn't have a life, and I know
Yeah.
it's terrible, but I think it's just what comes to my mind. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, mine is a little more. I don't know. It's yours is very actually. That's much deeper of an answer than I was expecting. It's excellent. Because I can relate to that to some degree, but again, my daughter's only 6. Mine is, and I will preface this with saying, like, I do kind of, I am confident in the way that my daughter's relationship with technology, I should say, like, she doesn't always have a screen in her hand or whatnot. Now, that being said, though, one of the things that I always said was, well, I will never be that parent who turns on the TV to occupy my kid. And again, I do limit her TV and her screen time, but there have been times where it's just like, hey, daddy's got to work. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's Bluey or whatever else it may be, just give her something to occupy her. And I will say, I'll give my daughter the credit to say she likes a good TV show, but she's actually really good at playing on her own. So a lot of times she starts it and it's just kind of
Oh,
playing in the
yeah.
background. She's doing something else. But I was just like, I'll never be that parent who does that.
A lot of
As
that's
well.
really when you got more than one kid, frankly, they become their own little play thing.
Yeah.
They're the younger ones, especially. It's a little harder for my older kids, but the younger ones, man, they can just they entertain themselves.
Mhm.
One thing I am a couple that well, no, I'm gonna get ahead of myself here. So I
Yeah.
was gonna say
Yeah.
a couple things I am stickler on that I always knew I would be, and I am, and that comes up in one of these lists that we're gonna
Yeah.
go through today in a minute. But you had what that's the thing I'd say was a little misguided thought on what a view of kids. I
Yeah.
used to think that was so cool,
Yeah.
and I just don't think so anymore. So
Well. So this question, and I don't know. I know kind of the points that we're going to work through here, here in a bit. But what is something that because you do have a wide range. Your oldest is 16, right? That's what you said,
mhm.
16, and your youngest is 3.
Yeah, almost 40.
So you have tech parented in on a wide scale, almost in, I mean, maybe even multiple generations to some extent.
Mhm.
And so, what is something different about the parenting process and approach now than what you were maybe doing when your 16-year-old was the 3-year-old?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think one of the biggest changes and challenges has been because we have migrated away from a legalistic, standard-driven kind of family. We deal with things individually and as they come. For instance, we're not going to we don't say our kids don't. We just don't watch TV because there's nothing good on it. No, we're going to navigate individual things with them.
Hmm.
Or same thing with like dress has been a unique one. Like, what did you think when your kid, your girls were little, as opposed to what it is when they're teenagers? Navigating some of those gray areas is what I would call them. Things that aren't just so cut and dry. Whereas before, when my older kids were little, we were just very much like, hey, This is kind of quote unquote bless God what we do and don't ask any questions. I was never really our attitude, but it was more we were more of the persuasion that just having a handbook or a rule book was the solution to
Mhm.
producing quote unquote the perfect kids. But I think as time goes on, you want to give them not just a rule book, but you want to give them a relationship, and they are ultimately going to be spirit-led believers themselves who follow and pattern their lives after Christ, and it's not just always going to look the same. I think I never understood that when, especially when Adriana and Brent were small. Now I'm very much like, hey, these kids could very easily go to a church that's different than mine, or
Mm.
have a different viewpoint of something than I do, and I'm gonna be okay with that. I just want them to love the Lord, and I want them to follow Christ, and hopefully by example and by our teaching, they have the basic things, a basic moral compass, a basic scriptural foundation, and we want them to be able to live as adults. So not trying to. That's maybe another way to say it. I think earlier in my life I wanted to raise good kids. I think now I'm really focused on raising adults,
Wow.
and I
Wow.
think I think that that's kind of a big challenge that I would give to my former self
Yeah.
is lay more heavily on that, and I will create it creates challenges sometimes because my kids don't always understand. I might say, "Hey, I just don't like that song," and then I have to reason through the whys about it. And it may
Mhm.
not be like a cut and dry thing. It's just they might listen to a secular song or even a Christian song, but I might just not feel like it's appropriate for our family.
Yeah.
Like it might be, I know there's a lot of Christian songs out there about water. It seems like about water baptism. I don't know if you picked up on that. It's like
Mm.
that those are I just don't want to blur those lines.
Mhm.
And then you've got the issue of what is exactly acceptable when it comes to entertainment, um, whether it's music or media, audio, visual media. You know, what level of things are okay to watch, and that's going to be totally subjective for so many people.
Yeah.
But I have to be able to talk my kids through when I say I don't want you to do that, and here's why.
Mm.
Instead of just we don't watch movies or we
Yeah.
only watch G-rated things or whatever that standard is, which is that's all fine. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that maybe if that's what you want to do. I'm just saying working through things on a more individual level that causes them to think and reason and come up with ultimately their own decision whenever they're able to make those decisions. That's the way that I think is more healthy.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's been this, and we won't stay on this too much longer, but there's been this mindset amongst more conservative independent Baptist churches and families that as long as you send your kids through this pipeline, if you will, that they've created with their church 3 times a week and going to the Christian school and doing the
Mhm,
Christians, or doing the church athletic program, and then going to the Bible college or Christian college, and as long as you send your kids through this exact pipeline,
mhm.
then they're going to turn out, just guaranteed. And, in my life, I'm the oldest of four. And that would be how we were all raised. And I'm not complaining. I had a great time. I loved it. But my experience was very different than, for example, my younger sister's experience. We were sent through virtually the exact same pipeline. And for her, she's turned out great in her own way, but there's almost no room for individuality in that approach,
Right.
or there is no room for that. And it really can disappoint parents in the end, because when their kids don't turn out, like they don't get the product that they feel like they were guaranteed, it can be very difficult for a parent there. And so, yeah, that whole mindset of sending them, like I said, through this pipeline or cookie cutter process, it does
Yeah,
not work.
I think parents have to come down to this question: what is our objective?
Mm.
And I believe a parent's objective is really three things. One, it is to create a God awareness amongst your children through scripture, through teaching. They need to be aware of God. They need to know who God is. You connect that to them through church, through teaching, through Bible study, prayer time. create a God awareness. Number two is to create an example of the believers. You're modeling the faith. And
Oh,
then number three is to teach them life skills, and to learn how to do things, whether that's take care of finances, whether it's um, you know finding out how to just do things that you need to do to be functional in life. And that starts when they're little, right? You got to teach them how to eat. You got to teach them how to change their clothes. I know that's simplistic, but you got to create a God awareness. You've got to provide an example, and then you've got to show them how to do life. That includes things like structure and rules and becoming obedient and functional and normal and relational, all those things that matter. I think those are the three kind of lanes that a parent finds himself in. Not, they've got to go to this certain church, they've got to dress a certain way, they've got to think exactly like us. I think it creates a situation where a parent is much more free from the fear and the guilt of, oh no, my kid didn't turn out exactly a certain way. I just don't think that's fair. I think things have changed so much with social media and internet. I mean, you can't keep ultimately kids back from being exposed or knowing about other belief systems or
mm,
what other church ways of doing things, styles, and all these sorts of things. That's why your primary thing is to create a God consciousness.
yeah.
So they can then apply their relationship with God with all these things ultimately that you could never keep up with
Hmm,
as a
yeah.
parent. You're just hoping they understand who God is, they know the Bible, and they want to follow him. And it might look different for them than it did for us in our upbringing. And I think
Yeah.
keeps me sane, if you will.
Yeah, yeah. Because that pipeline mentality again. That's the only word I can come to mind with it. Of like, hey, sending them through. If you think of, and really, not to just pick on for all those out there who think all we want to do is pick on independent Baptist. Really, you can apply that in any. For those who just think, oh, if I read this book and I apply the teachings in this book to every kid. Not to say you can't glean from that, but just thinking you can send a kid just to a church, to a school, to a whatever, and it output a guaranteed result. Not only is that an unrealistic expectation, it's kind of lazy parenting,
Yes.
because parenting requires a lot more attention than that.
Yeah. Legalism in general is lazy living.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
as long as
Well,
I do a few certain set of things, I'm good. And that's not right. And how many tragic stories can we point to? The kids were cookie cutter their entire life, go to Bible college, get married, and then it all starts falling apart.
yeah.
Well, that's because there was no room to grow, express themselves, learn, reason together. And I think that's more my job. And I've learned that with my oldest ones so far more. I do think it's progressive. I think that when they're younger, there are just certain A, B, C, D, E. This is what we do. As you get older, then we have to start letting reason. We have to uh, uh, essentially see if they're ready to make choices,
Mm,
wise choices. Like that's one of the only ways you can know. Now you can wait. You can wait till college. You can wait till early adulthood. It's fine. But maybe it's my daughter who's got her license, letting her go hang out with some friends at the mall, or we have this outdoor mall. She's went just the other day, and trusting that she's going to make good choices and do right things when she's there, showing me that she's got her act together.
mm,
Rather than you'll never drive, you'll never be with a friend that
yeah.
I don't know. I got a background check every parent, whatever. I'm not saying I don't know the kids, and she would tell you if she was here. There are certain friends that I'm comfortable that she would do something like that with, and there would be friends that I would never sign off on that for,
Mm,
or people acquaintances more. I have to know that I've taught her scripture, that I've made her aware of God, how life works, and that she can go out and make those choices. I've seen, like with my kids, money's a good one. Um, the my older ones are learning money right now, and they've got savings and they earn money. They don't do it. We don't do allowance. We do earnings.
mm,
And they, I'm watching their spending, and I pulled them aside and said, I just want you to know it concerns me that everything you want to buy, everything is all clothes, or my son likes, energy drinks or whatever it is. And I'm like, man, you don't, or Fortnite skins.
yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
like, dude, you're going to wish you would have reappropriated some of this. So it's not like I'm not being legalistic. I'll let them, hey, if that's what you want to buy clothes with your money, you earned it. Um, and but I make them tithe, and I say, because that's a pattern I'm trying to establish and teach, and I make them save a certain amount. But you've got a spend category. I'm not going to tell you what to do. You can do
Yeah.
whatever you want to do with it. But then I'm going to watch and coach
Mm.
at some level. My little kids, they don't have a choice. They don't have money. They're That's not an option.
Yeah.
Um, and I think I told one of my kids just yesterday concerning money. You will never lack anything you need. So you don't have to ask me about it. If it's related to school or clothing or shelter or food, I got you.
Yeah.
That's my job. But if it relates to wants or whatever, you get to make those decisions. And if I start seeing a pattern of something that I think is not healthy, I'm just going to coach you on it. You still
Yeah.
got to make the decision.
Yeah.
I'm going to coach you on it.
Yeah, I think the comparing coaching or parenting to coaching is actually a really healthy mindset, because when you're a coach of like a team, like a football team, basketball team, you cannot control those players. You can
Right.
call plays, you can give them kind of insight, and try to pump them up, get them excited, cheer them on. But at the end of the day, those players, and it happens all the time, a football or a quarterback rather is going to call an audible or run an option, something that the coach didn't necessarily say to do. And sometimes that's a just horrible result, but oftentimes, hey, it was a good call. And that's a coach to kind of player relationship. There is that I'm going to give you insight, but sometimes I know that things are going to just, life is going to look different, whatever. And so I trust you in that way. And so, but I think it just comes down to, like you said, you're coaching because you can't control them. You're coaching them, not controlling them.
Yeah, and one more point to be made about that. I think in the analogy, this is kind of how the conversation started, but in the analogy, I think you also, if I were coaching T-ball kids as opposed to high school baseball kids,
Yeah.
man, I'm gonna go to a T-ball team. Large amount of kids have never played ball, and I'm gonna walk over and say, "This is a bat. This is how
Yeah.
you hold the bat.
Yeah.
This is a baseball. This is first base, second base, third base. This is right field." That's what I mean by when they're little, you are training and teaching how life works, establishing authority, establishing patterns. But as they get older, there is going to be more, they're going to know that. They're going to know what they're supposed to do. Now it's like execute, or you're going to set the bench.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whereas in T-ball, first grade, second grade baseball, everybody's got to play at least a couple innings.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's you're expecting that those foundational things were brought in. That's why they call it elementary school,
Mm-hmm.
elements, fundamentals. Then secondary is, and it's even in college. You see the same thing. Earlier freshman year, true, false, multiple choice questions can be acceptable. But as they move on into senior year, graduate school, doctorate. I teach a doctorate course right now. Honestly, I don't even hardly meet my student. It's like, read
Mm-hmm.
this. I'm meeting with you. Show me your outline. Let's meet for 30 minutes. Okay, your paper's due next week. I'm kind of coaching them along. So different levels, different ages, different experiences require different methods of
Yeah.
coaching and teaching. And I think that's the same thing you find with kids. And I will say this: we're going to bridge into a topic for that we're really going to kind of tease out over the next lesson or two here. But I'm going to zone in specifically here now on raising multiple kids,
Yeah.
specifically 5. That's my
Yeah.
world. And what is it that we are trying to do as a couple to raise 5 children at the same time in a Christian environment, to model the faith, to instill a God consciousness, and to teach them how to do life?
Oh.
And so we're going to, over the next couple episodes, maybe 1 or 2, give you 10 tips for raising multiple children. I think many of them would overlap for a child or one child, but there's some basic principles we've tried to do that really, really are beneficial. And so, um, Yeah, let's maybe kick it to the next episode here, Luke, and
Yep.
that gives you a little foundation of what we're going to work with here. But me hope. I mean, parenting's tough, man. Parenting is
Yeah.
not easy. It's a challenge. It's work, and I will say this, but there's no greater work
Yeah.
um, that you could do, and no greater discipleship opportunity that you have, and to mentor and model and teach the faith to those that God has entrusted to you. It's the highest honor. So we'll look forward to diving into that next time, man.
Yeah. Yeah, let's do a couple quick takeaways for the episode.
Yep,
Just two kind of tweetable things that you
yep,
said that I want to
yep.
reemphasize, or that we said. I don't remember who did, but I know you said this one. Legalism is lazy living.
Yes.
That's something applicable to parenting, but also just anything. So again, that's just
So
somebody. Some
it's universe. Like I stumbled on a sermon today. I don't even know how. I was looking. Well, we're going to do a future episode on sermons, specific sermons that impacted me, and I was looking for one of them, and I
Mhm,
found this other sermon, and it was lazy
mhm,
preaching. It
mhm.
was topical, lazy, and I just thought to myself, it's that whole same spirit. It's easy preaching, it's easy living. It requires no thought. It requires no nothing. All you have to do is get a manual and tell you to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and you do it, and it's done. It's easy,
Yep.
but it's shallow and it's weak, and nothing of life in life that's of any substance is easy. Nothing.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
don't want easy street, man. That's not what I'm looking for.
Yeah. So somebody out there tweet that or X, post that on X, I guess we should
Posted on
say.
X.
Post on X. Legalism
Attack.
is lazy living. And then the last one, which again, don't think it was explicitly stated in this way, but I think I'm going to sum it up in parenting is coaching, not controlling. It is coaching your kids. And I love the analogy of the different levels, the different age groups, and obviously
Yeah,
different ages. There can be different levels of or ways and approaches that you take it. But it is more about coaching at the end of the day than it is controlling. So,
absolutely.
yeah. Well, Bryan, like I said, we're going to pick it up with our actual Raising Five Kids content in the next episode.
Mhm.
But if there's any final thoughts, you kind of take us
No,
home on
man,
this one.
we'll look forward to this. This would be more of a philosophical talk about uh, really raising kids with what is our goal and our focus. And now we're going to get into the more practical elements. So, guys, thanks for joining us. I hope you'll find this helpful. And we're sure looking forward to the next time that you join us for Church Advance Podcast. God bless you guys. Have a great day.
Thanks again for joining us for this episode. And we really would appreciate it if you could leave us that 5-star review. And then, of course, share this content with your friends. We want to help as many pastors and church leaders as we can. And be sure to, of course, follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you may listen to podcasts. And go ahead and subscribe to the Church Advance YouTube channel at youtube.com/@churchadvance. This podcast is hosted by Bryan Sams. It is co-hosted and produced by myself, Luke Clayton, and the team at mustincrease.com. If you want to connect with Bryan, be sure to head over to his website at bryansams.com. Well, we really look forward to seeing you again in the next episode as we continue to advance a reformation of fellowship, partnership, and gospel hope amongst Bible-believing pastors and churches right here on Church Advance with Bryan Sams.